Bismillah, hamidun musalliyan wa ba'd. Just a couple of, inshallah, a few points here. How many of you are familiar with Sigmund Freud? Sigmund Freud? Call him the father of modern psychology, right? So there was, and so he wrote his things like the 1800s, late 1800s, I think he was. He came up with a model about the nature of the human psyche. And when you read the books of psychology and when you take your introduction, like high school psychology, you learn about the id and the ego and the superego, right? Yeah. So the way Sigmund Freud, after looking into all of the advancements of human mind and research and the enlightenment of Europe and all of the great things that they have to offer, he said, you know, the id is just like the basic animal self. I desire this thing and I'm going after it. And I'm not thinking about consequences. I just want what I want now, for me, right? So this one is not thinking about its place in the world. And then he says the ego is where a person is now maturing in dealing with the world around them, and they realize they're part of a society, and they realize that if I'm going to succeed, I need to understand how to deal with other people, right? How to act in the right situation and how to respond to certain engagements. And then he said the superego is where someone becomes this altruist. They're just enjoying to do things for others, even when it limits their own value and their own purpose and their own interests. They just are out trying to help other people. They're just out feeling that. So long time ago, there was an Imam, al-Baqilani. He wrote about psychology, but our understanding is that spirituality informs psychology, and psychology can suppress spirituality. You see? There is a struggle between the soul and the body. And so if the soul's in control, then the mind will be in good shape, right? But sometimes things can happen, and there was no methods of the soul there to help deal with it, or proper understanding of the methods, or no superstitious ideas around the proper methods, right? And so then that creates certain mental illnesses and things like that, in which people are saying, spiritually, I want to do this and this, but there's something in their mind going on. So, Imam al-Baqilani said, in the Quran, you guys know the story of Joseph, right? Prophet Joseph, peace and blessings be upon him. The wife of Aziz, she was very much attracted to him. He is a very handsome man. And so she went after him, right? And some of the women blamed her for being some woman out of her control, because usually it works the other way around. Men pursue women. And she said, you guys come and see. I want you to see this young man, and then you tell me. And what did they do? He walked in and they're like, you know, they cut their fingers, because they're too busy looking at him in awe. And so this is a nafs al-ammaratun bisu. The basic reality is myself will do things because of what it wants that harms myself and other people. But I'm not able to see that for some reason, because that's the base self. This was said 700 years, 800 years before Freud said anything from the Quran. Okay? Going back to the Quran and what it represents. And so then the scholars said, well, you know, in Surah Al-Qiyamah, in the very beginning, where it talks about a person thinking that there's a day of judgment, and the things I do and say, I'm going to be held accountable. So now, uqsimu bin nafs al-lawwama. I swear by the self-blaming soul, one who's accounting oneself, thinking, you know, should I have said that? Maybe I should do this and not that. You know what? I was wrong. I should not have done that. You know, that mindset, taking account of oneself. So this is the next step, where you're now going out of that animalistic desire and you're seeing consequences. You see? And then the third is a nafs al-mutma'inna, comes in Surah Al-Fajr. And it comes at the end of overcoming the tyranny of society by being an altruist. Look. It's saying that you need to be, don't blame the rulers who are corrupt. What are you doing? كَلَّا بَلْ لَا تُكْرِمُونَ الْيَتِيمِ. Worry about Fir'aun and all of them. What about you? Allah is saying. Okay? And so then, after telling this story about rejecting the self and supporting, what is good and not being attached to one's wealth, then he says, "Ya ayyatuha nafsul mutma'inna," the one who died and they were living as an altruist. See, the goal of Islam is to create altruists. What is an altruist? Someone who is seeking to do good to others, service to the world, caring for the welfare of other people, especially, first and foremost, the weak, those that are poor, disadvantaged, marginalized, mistreated, abused. We have to go save those people and uplift them and make their life better. This is the fundamental objective, because that is the divine point. If you look at all Asma al-Husna, out of all of them that you know, you'll find most of them are some element of taking care of people and taking care of others and being nice and understanding and dealing with things in a good way that makes the world a better place. And so this we see that our values that we have from the Holy Quran preceded all of this modern advancement of Europe. I'm going to throw out there, maybe somebody had heard about this from us and slipped it into their own thing and owned it. And this is what we're seeing on a massive scale whenever you really look at it. Like, for example, those things that are very consequentially valuable that are written in the Constitution, you will find those things were already in the Sharia, right? Now, why are we having this disconnect? Because for hundreds of years, the Muslim community has no leadership. They're not cavorting leadership. So without that, we don't know our history. We don't really know our values. We just know routines and rules for the sake of rules. We're supposed to do these worships. Why do you do that? I don't know. I saw my uncle doing it. Sheikh said so. This is what we do. We have to intellectualize spirituality. Imam al-Muhasibi, who was in the 130th year Hijrah, so he's now 1300 years ago. He wrote a book, and in the beginning of his book, his book was about a comprehensive moral understanding, right? And it's called Risalat al-Mustarshidin, the treatise for the seekers of guidance. Actually, Imam Zayd Shakir did a brilliant translation of this in commentary. Okay, but he begins by opening up with your explanation of the fundamentals of Bismillah, Alhamdulillah, La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah. Then he goes into Li'ul al-Albab. And he highlights that the true believer is an intellectual. The believer, this is the tabi'een. This is the mindset of those early people, that the believer intellectualizes their spirituality. And when being spiritually, they do it as an intellectual person. And that whenever they are learning about things in the sciences, they're thinking about it in terms of divine truth. And that is how they see everything. And so when we're like this, we will succeed. And so this is the goal that we need to have in ourselves and in our community, to uplift and revive this lost element of what it means to be Muslim. Jazakumullahu khairan.